What's good, y'all? Back again today with a very special video. I'm here today with probably one of my most personal videos, one of the most important videos that I've had so far. So if you know anything about my channel, maybe you've noticed that most of my videos are out in nature with trees behind us, with life creation around us. There's a reason why I do that. Now, on our day-to-day life, we are surrounded by buildings, synthetic things, metals, and man-made constructions. However, if you listen, you can't hear anything. You can't really hear any cars. I'm standing in the middle of the street right now. There's nobody gonna hit me, and I don't need to worry about it because we're at a state park. Okay, so if you look around us, we have a beautiful life. And actually, maybe we could zoom in right there. There's a deer over there. Let's see if we can get a little close on it. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but the important part we have to always know when we're coming back into nature is that you have to have the right vibration, the right aura, okay? Because coming from out into from the city into this life is definitely a different change of pace, and the animals and the creatures, the bugs, everything that's inside of this trail will actually react to how you are. Okay, so your vibrations will let off a field of energy that may be invisible to the natural eye, but is very visible and noticeable to all of creation. So I don't know if we're going to see that deer again, but we're going to move forward and try to see it. But we always got to remember to not get scared of any animal. For some reason, we've been trained to be scared of animals. We've been trained to feel like they're going to attack us or bite us or eat us, whatever it is. But at the same time, we have to know that as God's creation, as God's human beings, we are representative for the Most High. And He gave us dominion and rulership over these animals, as I've said before. When I say rulership, it doesn't mean we rule over them with an iron fist and we beat them and we show them that we're more dominant. But it means that we're ruling over them righteously. We know that we have power over them and we utilize that power with righteous intent. So let's move forward. As I said, it's very important to get into nature, because if you look around us, this is very different visually than you're used to seeing. Now, there's something that I realized recently, and it was actually one of the revelations that I came upon, was that we are our senses are being invaded by synthetic materials, okay? So this means that when you think about your senses, you think about your 5 senses. You think about sight, you think about sound, you think about touch, you think about taste, and you think about smell. So if you think about those 5 senses, basically what I'm saying is all of our senses are being invaded by man-made or synthetic materials. So let's just start from the beginning. Out of the 5 senses, let's think about your sight. A normal person in a city life every day is looking at computer screens all day, synthetic, man-made. They're looking at large buildings and infrastructures all day, synthetic, man-made. They're sitting in their car, they're looking at everything that was synthetic and man-made. Now, when we think about your smell, all day we're breathing in oxygen that's polluted, man-made, chemicals, man-made. We're breathing in smog and radiation from the cars, man-made. So when we think about our touch, our physical touch, every day we're touching on our phones, a man-made glass. We're typing on our tablets, man-made glasses. We're touching buttons and plastic keyboards all day. Everything is man-made that we're touching. So far there's 3 of our 5 senses that have been invaded by synthetic materials. And when I say invaded, I mean we are no longer feeling organically. We are no longer sensing organically. This means that our sight, we are no longer looking at things that are organic. We are no longer feeling things that are organic, no longer smelling things that are organic. The things that we taste are no longer organic. The foods that we are tasting, have been proven to be, some foods are even cloned. So a lot of the foods that we're tasting right now are not even organic. So as we see, very similarly, a lot of our senses are being invaded by unnatural materials. This is why it's important to get back into nature. Now, I want to talk about the difference between nature and the city. So when we say nature, this is how nature grows. Look at this tree right here. Look at that. Look how big that tree is compared to me. And it's huge. All type of life living in that tree. But when man comes and chops that tree down to build an infrastructure or a corporation for his own personal gain, without somehow reciprocating or paying just due or making amends for chopping down the home of one of God's creatures, that throws an imbalance in the mixture. So now we have an imbalance in our society where man is taking more than he needs, and it's at the cost of the rest of creation, the rest of God's creation. So this is why we have to get back to nature and always have an appreciation for nature, because even the science tells us that the very trees that we're standing around provide oxygen for human beings. So let's move forward. So I had a friend from New York, and she told me that she doesn't have a backyard or a front yard. And it's true. Actually, a lot of people from New York don't have a backyard and a front yard because the infrastructure is so condensed in a small area. So what happens is a lot of people in places like New York and metropolitan areas, they're surrounded by nothing but tall skyscrapers and tall buildings, and it's basically enclosing a lot of pollution, and it's not allowing the oxygen to basically freely flow into the atmosphere and for them to be getting new oxygen. So this is why they say there's a certain atmosphere in New York, because a lot of the pollution, a lot of the smog, a lot of the things that would otherwise be sent back into the atmosphere is clouded by these infrastructures. So this is why coming out into places like this or appreciating large bodies of land that are uninterrupted is very important. This is why they have wildlife parks and reservations to actually, as the word implies, reserve the natural state. Because if we build too many infrastructures, it doesn't matter how much money we have, we won't even be able to breathe. So this is why this is important. So this is the natural environment in which we were created, where man was created. Now we're living in, the natural man is now living in a city environment, a metropolitan environment that's very different. That's actually the polar opposite of how nature is. Where we look down here and we can see the soil, or should I say the dirt, we can see the actual dirt. Whereas the concrete is very hard. So if you think about this, the skeletal structure and the toll that the concrete takes on the human skeletal structure is very intense. If you're thinking about walking on concrete day to day, your 9-to-5 job, you're walking on concrete, most of the activity is on your knees. You're hurting your knees, you're putting an impact on your knees because your skeleton is impacting against the concrete. As opposed to if you have your shoes off on the soft terrain, the earth, then basically all of your energy is absorbed back into the earth. There's not as much as an impact on your knees. So if we take the longevity or the life of someone who's lived in nature their entire life versus someone who has walked on concrete their entire life, we'll see a stark contrast and a difference between their skeletal structure over time. The wear and tear on the person who has walked on concrete every day and has that impact on his knees because he's not touching the actual soil is going to be much worse than the man who was born in nature. It's also important to reconnect with nature because if you notice, the animals around us are all connected to nature and they all have a connection to each other. If you notice, maybe for instance a cat, even a domesticated cat, they're very aware. Why is this? Is it their natural inclination to be aware? Yes, but it's also your natural inclination as a human being to be aware as well. However, as I said, many human beings are living in the metropolitan areas where the concrete, like for instance, let's take this concrete for instance. As if we use this trailway as an example for our day-to-day lives as we walk down the sidewalks, human beings have made, due to convenience and due to comfort, have made straight pathways in which they walk, in which they drive. So if you're walking down the street, and for instance, walk with me alongside here. Now, I'm walking alongside on a concrete pathway. As I told you before, the concrete has an impact on our skeletal structure. Now, the rubber on our Shoes helps to soften the impact, however the impact is still felt on our skeletal structure. So we're walking along this pathway, and not only is it hurting our skeletal structure, but it's a straight pathway. After a while, after years and years of walking a straight pathway, you become accustomed and you become not aware as you should be of your outside environment. If we take other animals that live in an environment such as this, if we think this environment here, come walk over here with me. If we take this environment over here and compare it to the sidewalk that I showed you, we could see that an animal that had to deal with this type of environment every single day, he's going to be aware. He doesn't have a straight pathway set down for him. He's not walking one straight pathway. He has to constantly be aware of the hills, the valleys. He has to be aware of the dirt roads. He has to be aware of the traps that may await him. Even a deer who travels the same path every single day has to be aware of his environment, because at any given turn, the circumstances on that particular day might be detrimental for him. Even if he walks the same pathway, he still has to be aware. So as human beings, we become dull to our senses, to all of our senses, all 5 senses, and therefore we're not living as we should, and we don't have connection to nature. This is why it's important to get back out into nature. Make sure you drink water, because your body is comprised of 50 to 70% water. So we have to revitalize that water in us. We have to keep a balance of water in ourselves. We have to make sure to get sunlight, because sunlight activates the vitamin D inside of us to help us thrive and to be healthy. And we have to make sure to connect to nature, because our senses were made to thrive in nature. And with that being said, of course, I don't want to take too much of your time. I love all of you. And please, if you have some time, turn off the computer and get outside. Even if you just have a small backyard or a small little patch of green land, just thank God for that. And please, until next time I see you, I need you to vibrate higher. I had a friend from New York, and she basically told me that she doesn't have any backyards. She moved to Texas, and she was basically amazed at having a backyard. She was amazed at having a back and a front yard. And I couldn't really understand this. But yes, it's true. A lot of people in New York don't have a back or a front yard due to...
Got it? That's it, man. I want to get up that shit. That's what I'm talking about. And if you want, oh yeah, I would have put up my shoes coming down.
No, you about to climb this.
Yeah, that's why I want to be up there. I want to see what the fuck is up there. I feel like there's a hole at the top. Because it's like an observatory for the stars.
This shit is scary, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
Man, this... You ain't playing.
There's nothing here. I love black people, bro. I love black people.
That's it. That's that communication right there.
There might be people.
That's my people. All right, look, bro.
Come
over here. Come get me. Make sure you get a good shot of me.
Got you.
Hold this down, bro. Hold it down. Hold on. You got me?
I got you.
Fucking eye.
I'm thinking like, how you getting down, man? You keep going up, man. Really, how you getting down, bro?
I'm gonna get out, man. Whoa!
So you look how far this stretches. Stretches all the way here.
All right, now let me get out before I break my shit. Oh shit.
Relight it.
Oh.